Hey there YouTube, this is Mr. Lubufu, and I am here with the second episode of Judge, Jury, and Executioner. So today, the topic was brought up by YTBE Handling 11, who asked me to talk more about the stack and instants and sorceries on the stack. So the stack is a Magic the Gathering setup that determines which spells resolve first. So let's say I have a Grizzly Bears in play and someone tries to do something. Let's say they try to Doomblade my Grizzly Bears. The Doomblade gets put on the bottom of the stack is the term. Any other spell played in response, so let's say I unsummon my bear, gets put on top of it on the stack. I should do this. There we go. So it gets on top of the stack. The stack is actually a computer science term, which is a first in last out. You don't have to know this in particular, but it's a first in last out. So whichever spell was cast first will be the last one to resolve. So you can play instants in response to other instants. So if they try to Doomblade my Grizzly Bears, I can unsummon it in response. So the unsummon gets put on the top of the stack. The unsummon will resolve first. So then the Grizzly Bears will go away into my hand, and then the Doomblade, which tries to resolve, cannot, since there are now the Grizzly Bears is in my hand and there are no legal targets. So the Doomblade would get countered. The term would be countered due to no legal targets. It's not actually countered like counterspell, but it gets off the stack. The target that it had before, so the Grizzly Bears, is no longer there, so it will happen, and or Doomblade will get off of the stack and do essentially nothing. You can always do instant, well, not always, but I'll get to that in a second. Instants are the only cards that can go on the stack. All spells initially get put on the stack. So except for basic lands. So if I'm trying to cast my Grizzly Bears, for example, someone can do something in response. So for example, if my opponent has, I just thought of this now, if my opponent has a Wolfear Silver, or has a Birds of Paradise, and they try and cast a Wolfear Silverheart, the Wolfear Silverheart gets put onto the stack. In response, which is oftentimes the term used, in response to the Wolfear Silverheart getting put on the stack, but before it enters the battlefield, you can do something like Doomblade their only other creature or something. This is also how counterspells work, is any spell that gets attempted gets put onto the stack first, and then once the stack starts emptying out, the spells start resolving. So typically, if your opponent is tapped out and you play a creature, what's actually happening is your creature goes onto the stack, they say okay, it resolves, and then it enters the battlefield. And then any enter the battlefield triggers begin. The stack also has a couple other uses. Let's say I have a Verdant Force and an Archdemon of Unts. So let's see if I can get this nice and zoom so you can see. It's a little bit blurry, but basically what Verdant Force does is at the beginning of each upkeep, put a 1/1 Saproling token onto the battlefield. And Archdemon says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a non-zombie creature, then put a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Now, if this is your upkeep, at the beginning, both of these triggers, or both of these triggers is the term, get simultaneously activated, or both triggered. You choose, as the player who controls them, which one gets put on the stack first. Now, this is important. Typically in a more casual match it doesn't matter so much, but it determines which trigger you put on first. So, especially in Magic Online, this is very prevalent. If you're going to have a little box that pops up and you have the two triggers, right? You click on the one that you will put on the bottom of the stack. So if I click on Archdemon, then Verdant Force would be put on top of the stack, and then the Archdemon trigger would happen. So if I click on the Archdemon, first Verdant Force would happen, and I would get a 1/1 Saproling. Then this trigger would get off the stack, and then Archdemon of Unks trigger would go onto the stack, or it would be the next thing to resolve on the stack, and then you would sacrifice a non-zombie, say the Saproling you just created, then create a 2/2. Whereas if you click on Verdant Force, the Archdemon trigger gets put on the stack, or the Verdant Force trigger goes first. All triggered abilities are also put on the stack, so this is how a card like Stifle works. Is if someone tries to crack a fetch land, the trigger from the fetch land also gets put onto the stack. So if you click Verdant Force on Magic Online, Verdant Force will be put on the bottom, then the Archdemon. So first, you'll have to sacrifice a non-zombie, then put a 2/2, and then you'd get a 1/1. So if these were your only 2 creatures, if you click it wrong, you'd have to sacrifice the Verdant Force, then you'd get a 2/2, and then you'd get a 1/1 after, because the trigger's already put on the stack. The last thing I should mention is that there's one ability that is really prevalent on the stack, and that is Split Second. I'm just going to be using Angel's Grace. Let's say I am at 3 life. So my opponent, so the left cards are going to be cards I'm playing, the right. So my opponent plays Lightning Bolt targeting me, and that gets put onto the stack. In response to that going on the stack, I play Angel's Grace. Angel's Grace and cards like it that say Split Second means as you cast this spell, players can't play spells or activated abilities that aren't mana abilities on the stack. So, if I play Angel's Grace in response to Lightning Bolt, they in fact cannot play a second Lightning Bolt. And why would you want to do this? If Angel's Grace did not have Split Second, right? I'm at 3 life, he plays Lightning Bolt, I play Angel's Grace, he plays Lightning Bolt in response. Let's assume it doesn't have Split Second. What would happen is, this bottom Lightning Bolt would activate first, or would get off of the stack first, so I would take 3 damage and lose right there. Then the Angel's Grace would trigger, and then the second Lightning Bolt. But with cards like Split Second, you actually cannot cast a second Lightning Bolt in response. And that's important because if you if you're like, okay, I have Lightning Bolt, and then I'm going to play a second Lightning Bolt for some reason, right, in response to my first Lightning Bolt, and then the Angel's Grace. I don't know why you would exactly do that, but the Angel's Grace would get off the stack first. Your life total, any damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 would reduce it to 1. Then these Lightning Bolts would go on the stack, and you'd be down to 1 life. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of Judge, Jury, and Executioner, where I talk about the stack. If you guys want me to talk about any topic in particular, whether it be a specific card like Birthing Pod, or just any sort of Magic rulings or anything like that, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I look through all the comments and I pick one that I think will offer a good episode. As I mentioned in the first episode, the reason I do this is because I am currently a rules advisor, and I am practicing to test to be a level 1 judge. So thank you guys all for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, and please let me know what sort of topics you want me to talk about in the next episode.